If you've never made gnocchi before and you think it's complicated, you have to stick around because it's so easy, and I'm about to show you just how easy it is. Welcome to How to Make Dinner. I'm Paula. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're old here, welcome back. This is the second part of a 3-part series on leftover mashed potato. Because leftover mashed potato is a thing that we all face. It's an issue that we all struggle with at times, but there's so many sweet ways to use it. Last week we made potato scones, which is an absolute Scottish delicacy. If you haven't had them before, you should watch that episode because it's great. And today we're making gnocchi. So I have some leftover mashed potato here, and I'm just gonna show you how easy it is. It's crazy easy. So a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to make gnocchi. It's actually just potato and flour, and sometimes egg, sometimes not egg. It's kind of optional, but I tend to use it because I feel like it helps the gnocchi hold together better in the water. So I'm putting 1 egg in. I have about 500 grams of potato that's left over. For each 250 grams of potato, I start with about 65 grams of flour. So I have 500 here, so I'm starting with 120 grams of flour. It's a little bit of a process to actually get it just right, but that's a good starting place. And then as you work the dough, you'll see if it maybe needs a little bit more. It's always better to start with less flour than more because you can always add, but you can't take away. So this looks like a big crumbly mess right now. So I feel like it might be enough, but you'd be surprised once you get going. And once you start working it in, it kind of gets really sticky really fast. So now that it's kind of worked together a little bit, I'm just gonna dump it out onto my work surface here, just because it's easier to deal with my 2 hands rather than this spoon. So let's see what we've got here. So gnocchi, if you've never made fresh pasta of any kind, gnocchi is definitely a good place to start because it's not that time consuming. It's actually pretty quick. When you think about making things like ravioli, so I'm adding a bit more flour because I can feel it's a bit sticky. When you think about making things like ravioli where every single one has to be, rolled out, filled, cut, pinched, all of that, like those things take a lot of time, especially when you don't make them every day. But gnocchi's super fast because it's just like these little pillows and you just cut them and roll them and boil them and they're good to go. So this is a bit of a tricky part because you don't want to over mix the dough because you'll get gummy, rock hard like gnocchi, which is not good. But if you underwork it, there's a risk that they might fall apart in the water. If you're sensing that might have happened to me in the past, it's because it has. It's very devastating. Like it can become just total mush. So you want to work it just enough so that it actually feels like a dough. But once it starts to kind of feel like you don't really want it to be too springy. I think this is just about right. So I'm going to go with it. A little bit more flour just so that it's easy to work with. And you can definitely use like a gluten-free flour if that's what you're into, or if that's what your body's into. This is just all-purpose. So next step is to cut them and make basically like little ropes out of them. And then from these ropes, we're gonna make little pillows. So it's pretty fast. I mean, this has been 5 minutes? We're already at this stage. So once you've got the rope stage, I'll just cut this off to make them all perfect. You just want to cut them into little pillows. You can use anything really. I just use a plastic scraper. And you want to make sure they're approximately the same size, width. And then from here you can just chuck them in the water like this if you want. But I like to roll them on a little board to give them the ridges. So I'm just going to keep some flour handy here. So I just flour my gnocchi board, and this could be a fork as well. And then you actually just use your thumb to kind of roll them along. And then you can get kind of quick at it. I'm super into like every special gnocchi has its own little shape. I don't really care if they're all perfect. But these ones are looking pretty perfect to me. So I have a few here, and I'm actually just gonna boil them now, just a few of them, just to test to make sure the dough is right. So I've got boiling water, heavily salted, and I'm just gonna drop them in. All right, so I have taken these few gnocchi out. They were in the water for about 2 minutes maybe, and then they started floating, and they're perfect. Look at those little guys. They're so perfect. They held their shape. They have the cute little indentation from my thumb, so that's gonna be a good place to catch the sauce. And let's see how pillowy they are. Oh my God. These are perfect. So they just give in to my bite, but they're not falling apart. So yeah. Have this last one. So you don't want to leave them in the water for too long. As soon as they come up to a boil or come up and float to the top, they're done. So I'm gonna keep rolling. I'm happy with the texture of these, really happy. So another little point to mention is that gnocchi can be made out of a lot of different stuff. So, I mean, the one that's all the rage right now, that's all over the Instagram, is the Trader Joe's cauliflower gnocchi. Which sounds pretty cool. I mean, it's great. You can make gnocchi out of sweet potato, carrot, pumpkin. I've done pumpkin before, out of even canned pumpkin. The thing is that you need to think about is like, it sounds like a super healthy thing, right? Oh, cauliflower gnocchi, because it's using cauliflower. But if you think about how wet cauliflower is, and it still has to end up being a dough. So all it really means is that you've had to use, or they have had to use, a lot more flour to make it into a dough. So it might be like a little bit of cauliflower, but it's still a lot of flour. So fun, so cool, but yeah, not to burst the bubble, but it's probably not a whole lot healthier than like any pasta or potato gnocchi or sweet potato gnocchi or anything else. So my favorites are probably potato #1, because it's so dry and you don't need to add a lot of flour, which is really nice. It's just a lot of potato. But I do love like the squash family as well, especially a drier squash, like a kabocha squash, because it's pretty starchy. And again, the more moisture that you start off with in this dough, the more flour you have to add to make it into a dough. So that's my rant about vegetable gnocchi. Good stuff, enjoy it, but you know. Okay, enough about that. So I'm just gonna keep rolling until I've gotten through this whole ball. All right, so that's all the gnocchi rolled out, and I've just got this giant pile. So I'm gonna boil these in a few different batches. If I wanted to, now would be a good time to freeze these. So just lay them out on a baking sheet like individually so they're not touching, and then freeze them. And then you can just use them whenever. But I'm gonna cook all of these because I'm really hungry. But in batches, not all of them in the pot. Oh shit. Okay, we're getting some floaters here. Ooh, they look so good. Pull these out. So I'm putting them on a lined baking sheet just because I have big plans for these guys and I don't want them to just get chucked in a bowl. I'm gonna deal with them in a minute. Oh my God, they're so nice. This is actually, I think, one of my favorite batches of gnocchi I've ever made. Oh! Look at these cuties. All right, so the next phase in our gnocchi journey is to finish them off. So, I mean, this is on its own pretty damn good. You could make like a garlicky oil and toss them in it. You could do a brown butter sage thing, toss that in there. It's all good, but I am gonna do 2 different sauce methods for this gnocchi just to show you a couple of my favorite ways to have it. So number 1 is just get any like good tomato sauce from the store, or of course make your own. I made this one. Can't you tell? Just kidding. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little bit of sauce in the bottom and then scoop a bunch of gnocchis on top. I mean, maybe there's a faster way to do this. Maybe there's not. Probably using something other than a barbecue utensil would be smart, but what can I say? It's what we've got. Okay, so when that's in there, I'm just gonna give it a little shuggle around and maybe just a few more blobs of sauce on top. I like it saucy. I don't know about you. And toss. This is just any sauce. This could be full of veggies, I actually just love pure plain tomato sauce. So there's that. And then I'm gonna take a bunch of fresh mozz and just put big blobs of it on top. I also love this with fresh ricotta blobs. Just as long as there's blobs. You gotta need, it's almost like the blobs of cheese are kind of like mirroring the blobs of gnocchi, if you will. It's really poetic. I mean, I was imagining using this whole thing, but I don't think I will because it's a lot. Just a couple more blobs. This is like 50% cheese at this point. Friggin' love mozz. So good. All right, I'll hold a bit back. I'll contain myself. So, I'm pretty happy with that just as it is. Maybe a few cracks of pepper. And then this puppy is going into the oven. So this is a cranked oven. It's at 450 and it's going in just until everything bubbles up and looks really wonderful. And the next sauce preparation is gonna be something a little bit different. This gnocchi treatment is coming to us from a blogger called A Virtual Vegan. I actually just met Mel of A Virtual Vegan recently, and she makes vegan comfort food, which, you know me, I don't do, or I don't know if you know me or not, you might not, but I don't necessarily adhere to any kind of dietary restrictions, but I do love me a good cashew cream sauce from time to time, and I love veggies. So I'm gonna use A Virtual Vegan Mel. I'm gonna use her recipe for this creamy vegan gnocchi with garlic and kale. So you saw me make this gnocchi. It's not vegan. I added an egg. So if you were actually gonna make this vegan, you would obviously not use an egg. And you can also buy the vegan stuff. You can buy it out of the bag, whatever. But we're gonna use this and we're gonna just follow the instructions for the sauce. So I'm doing a half recipe, which means half of a bunch of kale, and I'm using this black kale, also known as lacinato or dinosaur kale. It's also known as cavolo nero. It's known as black cabbage, I think sometimes. Anyway, whatever you call it, it's good stuff. You can even just rip it. I find chopping's just a bit faster. And I'm gonna put that on the same tray that I have my gnocchi so that everything's kind of organized. And then 6 cloves of garlic, which because I'm doing a half recipe, I'm doing 3. Okay, so I'm putting about a tablespoon of olive oil into my big saute pan here. I'm generous with olive oil, just cause. And then I'm gonna put the garlic in, and I'm heating it over about medium-high This is a quick little sauce. It comes together pretty quickly. And then I'm just gonna cook the garlic for a couple minutes until it starts to smell really garlicky in here. And then right before it gets brown, I'm gonna add the kale in. Into the kale, I'm gonna throw a few cracks of black pepper and a little pinch of salt. And the kale's getting nice and glossy, and it's starting to wilt down a little bit, which is what we want. We're just gonna let that kind of cook for a minute or two. Oh, chili flakes optional. I just read that part. You know I'm gonna go for that option. I mean, I'm gonna go with a good, decent sized handful here. So it says to cook this for about 5 minutes, which is cool, but the pan's really dry. So I'm just gonna add a touch of water just to kind of bring a bit more steam into the equation. That's a nice little trick I like to do with sauteing. Instead of adding more oil all the time, you can just add a touch of water, and then like, look what that steam has done. So I've been cooking this for about, what, 3, 4, 5 minutes or so. That's looking really good now. So next step is to add the gnocchi in. These beauty little pillows. And then the final step is this cashew cream sauce, which she's given us options to use cashews or hemp seeds, and I happen to have hemp seeds, but not quite enough, so I used hemp seeds and a couple of cashews as well. So this is the cream sauce. I made it a little bit earlier in the Vitamix because I didn't want to bust it out for the video, but it's basically just 75 grams of hemp seeds or cashews plus some water. And I'll link to her recipe in the description box so that you can follow it more accurately. So I'm just gonna pour this in, and then I'm just gonna turn the heat off and let everything finish in just the warmth of the pan here. This looks good. And if it gets a little thick, she does mention it sometimes can. You can just add a little bit of water to thin everything out. This looks delish. Okay, so we've got our 2 styles of gnocchi here, and I'm very excited about this one. Yum. Cashew cream sauce, man. Such a good one. I also have my tomato saucy one. Screw the bowl. Who needs a bowl? All right. Let's try a bite here. That is so lovely. Cashew cream, kale, garlic, gnocchi. Perfect. This one's really saucy. Ooh. Okay, so we've got a bit of a cheesy situation here, but I'm totally fine with that. Oh my God. And that one's just tomato sauce and mozzarella and crispy top. Like, what more could you ask for? So that's how easy it is to make potato gnocchi. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you go off and make it now. It's such a treat. No matter if you cook it with greens and garlic and cashew cream sauce, or you bake it with tons of cheese and tomato, whatever you do, you're gonna be really glad you did it. And what a great way to use up leftover mashed potatoes.